All right, 6 themes of global cultures. Mr. Wiles. Ethnocentrism. Very good. What else we got? Acculturation is one of our 4 italicized objectives, but not necessarily one of our themes. Good try. Tyler. Active nonviolence. Gandhi. Right? Creating social change. Right? Active nonviolence. Yep. More similar than dissimilar. You know, Hans talking about what's the website Hans uses? What is it? The website that Hans uses. Dollar Street.
Dollar Street.
Yes, you shop at Dollar Tree, and we use Dollar Street to figure out how similar we are to people around the world. His variable, again, is income, right? You have a similar income to somebody on the other side of the world, you're going to have a similar lifestyle to them as well. Another theme, human rights, right? Talk about, Eleanor Roosevelt in that list there, right? What else?
We're interconnected.
Interconnected and interdependent, okay? It's tough to separate ourselves from the rest of the world. In the world that we live today, because of technology, transportation, we're interconnected and interdependent. What happens here, or what happens over there, affects us here in our life as well. Okay, we got one more. That's 5. Yes, Ms. Lehman. We got active nonviolence. Stereotyping, right? Unfair, inaccurate labels, right? We'll try to look at those a little bit more, especially with our study on North America. We're going to talk a lot about race, civil rights over the next few weeks. Okay? You got Cameron in there? Yep. All right, very good. All right, what I want to do before we move on away from our bell work today, so we got our 6 themes, and you got a lot of Christmas presents, gifts, stuff like that. Maybe it could either be something that you received from somebody, or something that you gave to somebody. I want you to be thinking about one of those. I want you to pick out one, and then I want you to attach that to one of the 6 themes of global cultures to try to make some type of connection with one of those 6 themes. Sound good? All right, whether it be, interconnect. We could also incorporate the 4 italicized words. It may help us out there a little bit with acculturation, assimilation, cultural relativism, and cultural diffusion. Sound good? So you got a list of really 9. We got ethnocentrism twice. Of items to choose from. Think about one gift that either you gave to somebody or that you received that reflects one of those aspects. I'll give you an example. You need an example, right? Preston, we got ourselves a Nintendo Switch, right? And one of his favorite games right now is FIFA Soccer, right? So FIFA Soccer is reflective of this idea that we are interconnected and interdependent, right? We have soccer not just here, but other places around the world. It's so big. What happens there affects us here. I have to watch video games on, Brazil and all those other people now, right? So you think about a gift that you received or you gave, and then make a connection, all right? Go ahead and share that with the person in front of the person behind you. Discuss that. Come up with something. Yeah? Yes, it will. Yes, I apologize. Thanks for reminding me. All right, real quick before we share, Ms. Vance brought to my attention this week, we have Bellwork quizzes on Thursdays. This week will be an exception. They'll be on Friday this week. Sound good? So this will be a little bit abnormal since it's the first week of the semester. Okay? All right, who's got something to share? Austin.
I got clothes.
Okay? And what does that relate to?
Interconnected and interdependent.
And how does that relate to interconnected and interdependent?
Because other people wear clothes.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe like the design of the clothes or something that was on the clothes was something that, wasn't here from, the United States. Are you thinking of maybe cultural diffusion of the, you remember we talked about the I thought it was the Asiatic steppes, the nomads from the Asiatic steppes with some types of clothes or something like that. You remember that? No? Okay. All right, another one. Let's see if we got something different. Miss Bailey, you couldn't think of anything? Miss Charisma? Carson.
I got a baseball bag.
Okay.
Made somewhere else. So that's interconnected interdependent.
I think you're just reiterating what I used. You got to come up with something on your own, right? Ryan?
Well, for Christmas I got my brother a squirrel feeder.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know where I'm going.
I think I overheard you say human rights initially. Yeah, that would work if squirrels were humans. In that particular case, good try. Something else, Miss Lehman, Miss Baby. You guys are having a conversation. I heard you. Something.
Well, it's not really like what I got, but we got a new house.
Yeah.
So,
which of the themes?
we are more interconnected than interdependent.
Yeah. Surprise. All right, let's go ahead and change modes. The syllabus. I want to remind you where the syllabus is located. Actually, let's do this first. Chromebooks up real quick. Chromebooks up. We got global cultures. You're going to click directly on global cultures. You go down here, scroll down to the right, and we have 4th hour underneath Chromebook codes. You need to right-click, copy, click on Chromebook codes, and then take your code and paste it in there and then enroll. Again, you click directly on global cultures. You're going to scroll down, 4th hour. We're in 4th hour, Chromebook code there.
If
Copy.
we're already in it, it's okay.
No, this is a different one.
Okay.
This is different. You got to start over. So if you were 4th hour last year, it's a different code. Last semester.
Last year.
We got an issue, Dwight?
Sir?
If it's not letting you, you probably highlighted the space in front of the code. Make sure that you didn't highlight the space there. You guys a few more moments. Again, I'll show it to you. Again, you're going to click directly on Global Cultures. You're going to scroll down over here on the right-hand side. It says Chromebook Codes. Don't highlight the space in front of the 6, just up to the 6. And 4th hour, copy that, click on Chromebook Codes, and then you can log in. We're getting there, still missing a few. If you've already completed that, the Google Classroom code is available for you. Again, this is different from last semester, so you need to log in again. So there's the code here for 4th hour. You can go ahead and do this one, right-click, copy, Google Classroom, and then you can get logged in there while we're waiting for everybody else. All right, everybody stand up, please. Once you hear your name, then you can sit back down. We're still missing a couple. Austin Wigan, Caleb Schofield, Cameron, Carson, Casey, Charisma, Chloe, Derek, Doris, Dwight, Mr. McGinnis, Gabe, Caitlin, Laurel, Miranda, Nerdia, Pava, Riley, Ryan, Sierra, Torin, Tyler, who is still standing. Have your partner help you out real quick. Have your person next to you help you out. Miss Bailey, you need help? Dakota? Yep, take off, Miss Doris.
Have a good day.
Yes, you as well. Getting it figured out? Try that. It'll come back on here in just a second. You can start all over. Miss Lehman's in. Dakota's in. You go ahead and go back to your seat, and I'll check up with you in a little bit. Miss Bailey, still working on it? I think you're highlighting the space in front of the code is probably what's happening.
Can I not go to join class and add that code?
You are joined. You're in.
It's not pulling up on me.
Well, I haven't opened a session yet.
Okay.
And from your end, I'm not sure if you get logged in, if you'll be able to see what I can see.
No, I can't. Okay. But I can see what you assigned.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. All right. While we're finishing up, let's review some of the concepts from the syllabus that I wanted to reiterate before we get started with the second semester. Okay? All right, first off, drinks. I know it's right after lunch. You're allowed to have water in here. Everybody got it? Water. And that's not Gatorade. Sound good? Okay. Candy. You're not allowed to have candy in here. Sound good? We had an issue with that last semester for some reason. Somebody thought that they could just start tossing candy around. Not a parade. No candy. Restrooms. You have 2 a semester. Sound good? 2 visits a semester. If you need more time, like after lunch, and I can understand that, you come in, you grab the pass, you take off. The passes are right there by the door, and then you can take off, and then you can come in after the bell. Sound good? If you feel like you need a little bit more time, that's understandable. Sound good? But the passes are right there if you need them. Okay. We'll start with 2. Tardies. Again, you need to make sure that you're in here. Usually the threshold between the carpet and the tile floor. If you're on the carpet and the bell rings, tough one. You're out. Sound good? You get counted as a tardy. Map quizzes. Remember? What are they? They're all or nothing, right? All or nothing. You need to make sure you get them all. And incompletes, right? If you have any incompletes, missed assignments, when it comes to test time, what happens test time? You don't get to take it. And that includes your maps, right? If you haven't got your map done, you got to get your map done before you can take the test. Sound good? So I'm assuming that we got a pretty good understanding after going through this in the fall, but I wanted to reiterate some things. All right, sheet of notebook, paper, please. Line just left to center. We're going to take a few notes today. On this set of notes, which I've called, titled An Uneasy Path Abroad, or I didn't title it. I came across an article in Time Magazine a few years ago, and I thought it was really applicable to our class, so essentially summarized it. This article, what it does is it challenges us to think about where are we at, right? In the world in which we live today, as a country, as a whole. We're starting our study on North America this semester, trying to figure out where are we at in comparison to other countries, other cultures around the world. Sound good? All right. USS's role in the world today. Okay? So, this is a common question that happens to be out there in our culture today. Is the United States in a decline? I think of when President Trump was going through the process of being elected. His what's the saying that goes along with his campaign? What was it, Ms. Wilson? Make America Great Again, right? Great again. And it almost implies that America is not as great as it once was, right? So that question is kind of out there. Is the United States in a decline then, right? So a couple questions for us to consider when we contemplate this larger question of our decline. Who has the world's strongest and most technologically advanced military in the world? What's the answer to that question? Go ahead, partner up. Person in front of person behind you. Tell your partner real quick. Who has the world's strongest and most technologically advanced military in the world? Miss Munson. Us. How many said us? All right. Question. The second question. Who has the world's largest economy? The world's largest economy. Go ahead and share that with the person in front of the person behind you, please. World's largest economy. What we got, Miss Bava? Us, the United States, right? And question number 3, the country with the most potential for technological innovation. Who's that? Mr. Wiles? Us, picked up on a trend, right? So, with this idea of potential for technological innovation, I was talking to Mr. Sanford, a former teacher here at Eureka High School here in the Social Studies Department, Social Science Department. He travels around the world quite a bit, and he had a conversation with one of these delegates, people from China, quite a few years ago, and they were talking about differences between the Chinese culture and the American culture. And China's got a lot improving economy, a lot of good things going on. We talked about that last fall. And he said that the one thing that they don't have is they don't have innovators, right? People that can come up with new ideas. That's what we have here in the United States. And I can think that's kind of reflective of our individualistic culture, right? The creativity associated with that is something that we should almost pride ourselves in, right? Conformity is big in Southeast Asian culture. So they kind of lose this innovative type of feel when it comes to technological advancements in comparison. Okay, so here's some charts to consider. This chart is a little bit dated. It talks about, references the world's largest economies. You can see that the United States is up there. It gives you a reference point of the other large economies in the world today and how it's changed over the course and projected over the next few years. I say it's a little bit dated because I believe that China is projected to surpass the United States in a little bit quicker fashion than what's illustrated there. It says 2030 that the United States is still ahead of Japan. I'm not sure if that's completely accurate. I have to check on that. Okay. Another question that sometimes students come up with is, concerning this idea of the United States declining in power and our role in the world today, says, well, how can we stay at the top if we have this huge debt, this huge national debt crisis? Everybody familiar with what I'm talking about? All right. So how can we say that we're the best, richest, if we have this huge debt? So this video kind of helps us better understand what exactly is being referenced when it comes to debt here. Okay?
Has more than $17 trillion in debt, and each year the government borrows. The United States has more than $17 trillion in debt, and each year the government borrows more. They do this because it costs more money to run the country than the country currently earns in taxes. This is called a budget deficit. The U.S. deficit for this year is more than $500 billion. Yet the U.S. still regularly refers to itself as one of the most prosperous nations in the world. How is that possible? Well, national debt isn't like personal debt, and in a lot of ways is much less dangerous. For example, the largest single owner of U.S. debt is the Social Security Trust Fund, which is run by the Department of the Treasury. So, the largest single chunk of debt the U.S. owes is to itself. And Social Security isn't the only federal program holding federal debt. 1/3 of U.S. debt is held by federal agencies. You might be wondering how a federal agency can own debt. Well, if an entity like Social Security takes in more money in taxes than they need to pay out in benefits, they'll use the excess money to buy U.S. treasuries, which are just documents with an amount of debt that the U.S. now owes you. That way the extra money goes back into the general fund, Social Security gets to keep a note worth the value of the money loaned, and they start acquiring interest on that note. So long as the U.S. pays the interest every year, they avoid defaulting on the loan and everybody is happy. And that's the standard arrangement with U.S. Treasury notes, and part of why it is a safe investment. So safe that more than 30% of U.S. debt is owned by retirement funds and other risk-averse investors. A lot of noise is made in the press about foreign countries owning U.S. debt, but they only hold about a third of the total debt, and it doesn't even really matter how much debt they own. The interest on Treasury notes is incredibly low because the U.S. isn't in a serious risk of defaulting. To quickly explain how that works, if you give someone a loan of $100 and you are worried that they're going to default on the loan in 100 days, you would charge them $1 a day in interest in the hopes of getting your money back. If you loan someone $100 and you're not worried about them defaulting for hundreds of thousands of days, if ever, you can charge them fractions of a penny in interest and still feel totally secure. The idea now is that the U.S. is never going to default and therefore pays a very small interest rate. So national debt is something to keep under control, but isn't really all that scary. Also, according to the most recent Credit Suisse Research Institute report on world wealth, the U.S.'s current net national wealth is the top in the world. The U.S. alone has 29.91% of the wealth, the EU has 29.05%, and the next highest holder of wealth is Japan with only 9.38%. So, yes, the U.S. has a lot of debt, but that doesn't have as much of an impact on their national wealth as you might think. If you found this video informative, please subscribe.
Alright, so it is a little bit unnerving that we do have so much debt, and it does pop up in the news quite a bit, but who are we indebted to? According to the video, it says we are indebted to who? Ourselves. Okay, so that's a little bit more encouraging that we're not indebted to, all these other countries like, say, China, right? And we're indebted more so to ourselves, and, in a way, it shows that it's almost a secure investment to invest in that debt there, okay? So that kind of undermines the idea that America's in a decline because of the debt that we have, okay? What about foreign policy, or foreign policy power, more specifically, okay? And this is where I want to direct our attention for really the rest of the time that we have today. This is, when we say American, is America in a decline, this is where the decline is coming from. American foreign policy power. How much influence do we have on other countries and cultures around the world, okay? And according to our notes, it is quickly diminishing, meaning that it's not what it used to be. And so we're going to try to figure out, first off, where did our foreign policy power come from that made us such a powerful nation? And then, more recently, where's it all going? Okay, how is it disappearing? Okay, so there's, I think, 4 entities, 4 ways in which we acquired foreign policy power, and 2 of them are really similar. Sound good? This is the first one. Anybody think this is a historical event? We acquired a lot of foreign policy power because of our success in this particular event. Anybody want to take a guess? Raise their hands. Ms. Wilson? World War II is close. World War I. All right. So this one is reflective of World War I, the trench warfare of World War I. Sound good? Because of our success there, we acquired a lot of foreign policy power. Okay. The second concept here, where did we get a lot of our foreign policy power from? It's a concept that we looked at a lot in the fall semester. We focused a lot of it on the British concept here. And we talked about the white man's burden in Rudyard Kipling. Anybody remember what that is? What that was a reference to? It begins with an I. Imperialism. All right? So imperialism was another contributing factor to giving us a lot of foreign policy power because of the colonies, the large empire that we had set up over the course of the 20th century. American imperialism led to a lot of foreign policy power. Okay? This one, Miss Wilson, World War II. So you got World War I, you got imperialism, you got World War II. Because of our success there, really at the end of the conclusion of World War II, there's only 2 countries that were really in advantageous positions. At the conclusion of World War II was us. Anybody know what the other country was, Mr. McGinnis? Japan's a good try. You remember Japan was kind of in a bad spot because of the atom bombs, right? So Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So there's another country. You take another guess, Mr. McGinnis? Not Italy, good try.
Germany.
Not Germany, good try. Remember the Nazis in World War II were kind of sacked? Yes, the Soviet Union. Very good, Miss Nerdy. Russia, right? Those were the only 2 that were left over. So that's where you get to the Cold War era, okay? So, ultimately, this is the 4th entity foreign policy power comes from what? Money, right? So if you've got a lot of money, if you've got a strong economy, then you've got a lot of foreign policy power, okay? So how does that work then? How does money give you foreign policy power? Well, when countries are wanting to do something, when they're wanting to change up their infrastructure, if they're wanting to do some type of building, works project or something like that, they need money to do that. So where do they go to get that money? If we've got a lot of money, then who are they going to go to? They're going to go to us. And they're going to ask, can we have some of your money? Can you give us loans? And in that fashion, what we do is we say, all right, we're going to give you some loans, but what will we attach to that money when we give it to them? We'd say, we'll give you this money if you promote these democratic ideals, right? If you become advocates of human rights, right? So that's where the foreign policy power comes in. We get to take our cultural ideals and attach them to the money, the loans that we're giving out to everybody. Sound good? So that's why it's advantageous to have a lot of money and to be in a fairly rich standing, wealthy standing like we are. Okay? So when we would lend money to foreign countries, this gave the U.S. government an opportunity to push or administer our Western American ideals and our principles, specifically democracy. We can take democracy and say, hey, you want this money? We want to see some democratic principles being put into place in your culture, in your country. So there's your foreign policy power there. Sound good? All right. So we need to go to the other side then. So we acquired a lot of foreign policy power over the 20th century. And our foreign policy power more recently is diminishing. What is causing it to go away? Okay? So, who's stealing all of our power? There's three entities we have. The one that I want you to remember is the first one. Okay? BRICS. BRICS is an acronym. You guys remember all the acronyms that we had last semester? Weird, Subsearch, right? OPEC. BRICS is another one that you need to make sure that you put it to memory. Okay? Each of those letters stands for a country that's fairly strong economically. Can anybody take some guesses what the B stands for? Well, the R stands for Russia. All right, what's the B? Britain's good guess? Brazil. All right. Cooper Smith's in Brazil. Brazil, Russia, the I, India. The C is China. And the S? This one's a little bit, yeah. No? We got a guess for the S. Gabe? Saudi Arabia, good try. Very wealthy nation, right? Because of all the oil there. That's a good guess. This one's actually, we talked about it at the beginning of the semester last fall. We talked about apartheid. Mr. McGinnis? South Africa. Yeah. The S in BRICS stands for South Africa. So again, it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And what they've done is they've really got themselves together monetarily. They put together a big fund, so it's like a big bank. BRICS is a big bank. You may write bank in quotation marks out the side of BRICS, okay? So it creates an alternative. If a country wants money, it creates an alternative to go into the United States. No longer do all countries have to go to the United States to get their loans. Now they can go to BRICS instead to get money. Get a loan then. Sound good? All right. In addition to BRICS, you have the China Development Bank and you have the Brazilian Development Bank that are giving out loans as well. Okay? So that's going to, because of the alternatives that are out there, we don't have a monopoly on it anymore. There goes some of our foreign policy power. Okay? What about Europe? So, some people ask the question, if our foreign policy power is declining, we helped out Europe quite a bit over the past, 50 years or so, 100 years or so. Right? Why don't we have them reciprocate, help us out a little bit, right? Well, the situation in Europe is different today than it was just a few years ago. You had Cold War relationship with Europe, yet we're on the same side, or at least the Western Europeans are, because we're all fighting the Soviets, right? Well, ever since the Cold War ended, relationships are a little bit different. European nations depend upon a lot of natural resources that come from Russia, so we can't necessarily ask them to reciprocate and just help us out in these scenarios, okay? should we police the world? So this is also associated with foreign policy power. Sometimes people in the United States don't necessarily agree with us having a lot of foreign policy power in and of itself. The data goes back to 2013. The research said 62% of Americans communicated that U.S. should mind its own business internationally and let other countries get along the best that they can on their own. All right, so we've kind of contemplated that question a little bit last semester as well, especially when we're doing our study on the Middle East, is should the United States act as the policeman in those scenarios? The majority of the American population, at least in 2013, did not necessarily agree with that. Okay? So, one other question. Actually, let's skip to this first before we watch that video to finish up class. The future. So, if we are losing our foreign policy power, what can we anticipate, right, over the course of the next couple of decades, right? Globalization is not necessarily going to go away. Just because we're not necessarily controlling the issues and the cultural diffusion like we were in the past, it's not going to go away, right? There's still going to be culturation. There's still going to be cultural diffusion. However, the process is going to be less likely to include American worldviews. You guys remember when Hans was talking about economics in the majority of the world's population? Where's the majority of the world's population going to be projected over the next 100 years? Okay? Asia, right? So the majority is going to be there, and then what other location? What other continent is going to have the largest growth? Remember we said 1114, and then it becomes 1135, right? What's the 3? Africa, right? So even economically, it's going to shift away from Western Europe and the United States to other places around the world, okay? So you're going to see other cultures having an opportunity to diffuse their ideas and have a little bit more foreign policy power there, okay? All right, let's watch this video real quick before we finish up. Who dislikes the United States the most?
After years of nuclear negotiations,